Hey there, I'm a call myself the Property Alchemist. I'm doing a project up in Troy these days, renovating a building, and this is the second installment of what I like to call driving diaries. So I like to film these diaries on my way to the project or on the way back because I have a good amount of driving that I have to do, and it gives me an opportunity to, look back on what has happened and sort of give a detailed breakdown to everyone who's following the project of where we are so far. And so we are now in late May. A lot has transpired since we last spoke in a few areas. First and foremost, we've wound up having a good discussion with a plumber that specializes in sewer mains, selecting a firm called J&J, and we have started the process of installing a significant amount of utilities, especially water, that we need for this project. Specifically, we're putting in a new sewer main, which is going to go both to the front building, the main building, and the carriage house in the back. We also have a new freshwater main for the drinking water and the restrooms, etc. Again, there's one that goes to the front building and one to the back. And lastly, given that we are in a relatively dense urban area and code, we have to have sprinklers. So there is also some sprinkler mains that need to go to both buildings. So we're about halfway through the work, and there's a good deal left. But as part of understanding of how these projects work and sort of getting a sense for how things work in the real world, it's important to share an anecdote. In this case, when we went out and applied for the permit to do the sprinkler, as part of that process, what happens is the fire marshal from the local fire department comes out and does an inspection to sign off and sort of give his thumbs up or thumbs down on what is proposed. One of the things that's really interesting is that the way the code is written, the fire code, it basically has all of these specifications of what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to do it. Like most other codes, but in this particular case, because we're dealing with the lives of human beings and the safety of people, the way the code is written, it also gives the fire marshal essentially the authority to overrule any of the rules and either give you an exemption for something that otherwise you couldn't, or to ask for or require the installation of something that is more strict than code, or something that is more strict than code. And so in this particular case, given our situation, we were on the unfortunate side of being asked to do more. While we are in a dense urban area, the rear of the property has an alleyway which is relatively narrow. And when the fire marshal came and he was inspecting the property, there were some concerns about the ability to deploy fire ladders in case of an emergency. And there had been some recent fires in similar structures, and so the request, or shall I say demand, was that we install sprinklers. So not only do we have to install sprinklers in the front building because of the substantial work we're doing, adding more space and adding, raising the roof on the 5th floor, but we're now also going to have to put in a sprinkler system in the carriage house. It's not a small amount of money, but in the grand scheme of things, the idea here is that we're looking to try to maximize the amount of revenue that we can generate from this particular development, and in doing so, right, while we do have to pony up a lot more cash to get to the end, there is a commensurate difference on the other side. We got to do a lot more square footage because we put in the sprinkler system. And so that's an important part of the project, and is progressing relatively smoothly, all things being considered. Today, coming back at the moment from a visit up in Troy, I got a chance to meet with the architect and also with our electrical vendor, because we need to install a new electrical main and update the service, and there's a whole slew of things that we need to do in order to make sure that the building has enough power to accommodate all the apartments that we are planning to put in there. And so today we really focused on getting an understanding and looking at where the services are going to come in from the street. A lot of the main considerations in terms of the planning are, where are you going to put the meters? In a larger project, there's a large number of meters. They need to be outside and accessible. There's also, some switches and hardware that have to be, installed to shut off the power, etc. And, these are not small things that are just easily hidden in the walls, and so it does require a significant amount of forethought and planning of where all of these things are going to go. And so the focus of the meeting was really sort of to discuss understanding where the layout is going to be in terms of where we place these and how those are going to tie into the whole system overall. Also to discuss some different suggestions of how to implement this particular installation, and just talking through different ways in which we could accomplish our objectives, but then thinking about how those different ways may have long-term consequences in terms of maintenance costs, etc. And so, really what we landed on is that we're going to bring in essentially one trunk from the main that's going to feed the carriage house in the back, and then we're also going to bring in another trunk that's going to go all the way to the front building. It's going to feed the main front building. So instead of doing one main, we're going to do two separate lines, which is fine. It does reduce some of the on-site hardware costs and switches that we need. The other thing which is interesting for those who are nerdy enough to care, when you run a lot of power through these cables, they do emit electromagnetic radiation, magnetic fields, etc. And so one of the new technologies, which has sort of trickled its way into residential construction, which has existed, and physicists have known about for a long time, was the idea of a Faraday cage, which is a way to encapsulate some of the more, let's call them radiant components, and to make sure that the surrounding area isn't impacted by the magnetic, let's call it radiation, even though it's not really all that big of a deal. But that's about it for the electrician. Also today, the sprinkler team came out because our initial agreement was related to doing the work for the front building, and we completed that in the drawings, and then we had the inspection, and then after the inspection we now have to do a second component. And so the team from Matthews Sprinkler came out and took a look at the carriage house to get a better idea of what we're dealing with, although we've already had the drawings put together for that, etc. And so that as well is moving forward. Another critical development is our engagement with the structural engineer. There are a number of places where the structural engineer's input is critical. Listing them, in general, the first is we are dealing with the roof of the carriage house at some level, because we are extending the carriage house, so some of those beams need to get moved. And we also got a request from the historic preservation folks that some of the corbelling of the bricks that is currently on the exterior of the carriage house facing the courtyard, the request was that we keep that corbelling and make it internal and make it a visible architectural element to sort of maintain the historical character, which is fine. Having said that, though, there were some consequences to how we would approach handling that, which required an engineer to help us do some calculations around how big of a beam and how big of a header we're going to need, etc. Another component is, of his work is the fact that we are doing, in addition, increasing the footprint of both the carriage house and the main building. So, thinking about the footings, the depths of the footings that we would need, and, the types of footings that would be most appropriate given the weather that we have here in Troy, etc. And so, that was the second component. And then there's also the component of the fact that we are raising the roof on the 5th floor to create more, or to convert that entire attic into, habitable ceiling height space. And so, in doing so, right, there's a lot of, load calculations, because a roof has to hold a lot of snow and deal with a bunch of, different forces that require an engineer to give us their thumbs up on that. And so, that's where things stand with the engineer. And so that has also been moving forward as well. I'd gotten a chance to move forward in terms of our use of the Qualified Opportunity Zone legislation. For the Troy project, our building happens to be located in what is called a Qualified Opportunity Zone. This was a program that was created in the late 20-teens to help incentivize, the revitalization of certain, I guess they would call them blighted urban neighborhoods. And so we have gone through the process of validating and making sure that we qualify for that program, speaking with the accountant, speaking with the attorney, just to make sure that all our I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And, overall, without going into too much detail, it's a relatively straightforward program. It's only a couple of pieces of paper that you need to fill out to make it happen. And so that's moving along nicely, and we should be finished with the Qualified Opportunity Zone designation of the project within the next month or so. We also got a chance to do a lot of exploring around the different programs that are available that help to subsidize energy efficiency, heat pumps, and things of that nature. And so we are, let's say, blessed to live in a state where our utility actually gathers money from all of its users and uses it to help create incentives to create efficiency. And as part of that, National Grid does provide a significant amount of help, whether it is to make your building more energy efficient from an insulation standpoint, doors, windows, heat pumps, etc. Changing over from a natural gas fuel or oil fuel over to electrical. And so we've been exploring all of those programs. There are some NYSERDA programs as well, and it seems like so far we're in pretty good stead. The key to making it all happen, usually to make it easiest, is to find a vendor that has done and worked with this program before, because they are really the ones who do most of the heavy lifting in terms of the paperwork and legwork for this program. And so after doing the investigation, we found a local vendor that has done this over and over, actually came quite recommended. And so we also have made good inroads in building that relationship and making sure that we have somebody in place that's going to help us design out all of the mechanicals and make sure that all of the incentive programs that we can take advantage of are brought to bear. And so that's another quick update from there. Beyond that, since the last update, on the rear wall of our carriage house, there is, it's an old building. There are definitely some loose bricks and things that need to get taken care of. And so we have, spoken to a couple of masons to take a look and see what's going on there and help us get a better understanding of how we can make that repair quickly. Unfortunately, at the moment, that is a very significant repair, so it makes more sense to wait a little bit and sort of weave it in, with the overall work that we're going to be doing in the carriage house in the rear. And so, other than that, that is pretty much a good overview of all of the things that have progressed since our last debrief. Overall, right now, it's just been moving the paperwork along, getting everything approved to get to the point where we can get our permit. I think that one of the things that that has resulted in our work so far is, when the structural engineer came by and made some suggestions, it turned out that given the work that we were doing, we could take a simpler approach that would yield more livable space. And so one of the things that we are going through right now is a small redesign where some of the addition that we had planned for the first and second floor also moves up into the third floor, and which is one change since last time. But also, when the fire marshal came, he requested that we put a landing on the outside near the rear door, which would require us getting a variance because it would require some encroachment. So right now what we're waiting on is going back to the historic and planning folks to get another thumbs up for our slight change, but also to get a variance for our rear landing. Hopefully by mid-June we should be rolling and doing much more hands-on physical construction, and the project should be moving along. So with all that said, thanks for taking the time to listen and follow along, and see you next time.